Picture this. A single mother, sitting alone in a freezing Edinburgh flat, so poor she can barely afford to heat the radiator. Her baby daughter sleeps in the next room while she writes by hand because she can't afford a typewriter. She's surviving on government welfare checks that barely cover food. She's been diagnosed with clinical depression and has contemplated ending her own life. The manuscript sitting in front of her has already been rejected by 12 publishers, and the stack of rejection letters keeps growing. That woman would become the first author in human history to earn $1 billion from writing books. This is the story of Joanne Rowling, and if you've ever been told you're not good enough, if you've ever felt like giving up, if you've ever wondered whether your dreams are just too big for someone like you, then you need to hear what happens next. Let's go back to the beginning. Joanne Rowling was born on July 31, 1965, in Yate, a small town in Gloucestershire, England. From the moment she could hold a pencil, she was writing stories. At just 6 years old, she wrote her first complete story about a rabbit named Rabbit who got the measles. Her younger sister Diane was her first audience, and young Joanne would read her tales aloud, already dreaming of becoming a published author someday. But dreams don't always follow straight paths. Her childhood wasn't the fairy tale you might expect from someone who would later create magical worlds. Her relationship with her father was strained and complicated. Her mother suffered from multiple sclerosis, a devastating diagnosis that would cast a long shadow over the family. Joanne watched her mother's health decline year after year, and that pain, that helplessness, would later shape the emotional depth of everything she wrote. She was a quiet, bookish child who often felt like an outsider. At school, she wasn't popular. She wasn't the girl everyone wanted to be friends with. She was the one sitting in the corner with her nose buried in a book, creating worlds inside her head because the real world often felt too harsh, too cold, too unwelcoming. When it came time for university, her parents encouraged her to study something practical. They worried about her future, about her ability to support herself with nothing but stories and imagination. So Joanne enrolled at the University of Exeter to study French and classics, setting aside her dreams of writing to pursue something more sensible. But here's the thing about dreams. You can bury them. You can ignore them. You can tell yourself they're foolish and impractical. But they don't die. They wait. After graduating in 1986, Joanne bounced between jobs that never quite fit. She worked as a researcher and bilingual secretary for Amnesty International in London. She sat in offices, typed documents, attended meetings, and felt her soul slowly suffocating under fluorescent lights and bureaucratic monotony. Every day, she felt further from the person she was meant to become. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was 1990, and Joanne was on a delayed train traveling from Manchester to London. For hours of staring out a rain-streaked window at the English countryside rolling by. Most people would have been frustrated, bored, checking their watches every few minutes. But something different happened to Joanne Rowling on that train. She saw him, a skinny, black-haired boy with glasses, staring back at her from somewhere in her imagination. He didn't know he was a wizard. He was about to discover an entire magical world hidden within the ordinary one. And in that moment, sitting on that delayed train, Harry Potter walked fully formed into Joanne Rowling's mind. She didn't have a pen with her. Can you imagine? The most valuable fictional character of the modern era was being born, and she had nothing to write with. So she sat there for 4 hours, letting the ideas flood through her, building the world of Hogwarts brick by brick in her imagination, creating characters and plots and magical rules, terrified she might forget something before she got home. That night, she began writing furiously. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Just 6 months after Harry Potter appeared in her mind, tragedy struck. Her mother lost her battle with multiple sclerosis at only 45 years old. Joanne was devastated, shattered in a way she had never experienced before. She hadn't told her mother about Harry Potter. She hadn't shared this magical world that was growing inside her. And now she never could. The grief was overwhelming, suffocating, and it fundamentally changed who Joanne was as a person. Years later, she would admit that Harry's story became deeply intertwined with losing her mother. The mirror of Erist, that magical object that shows your deepest desires, came directly from her desperate wish to see her mother one more time. Death, loss, and the love that survives beyond the grave would become central themes in everything she wrote, because she lived those truths in the darkest chambers of her broken heart. Drowning in grief and desperate for a fresh start, Joan made a decision that seemed right at the time. She took a job teaching English in Porto, Portugal, hoping that new surroundings might help her heal. And for a while, things seemed to improve. She wrote during the day before her evening classes, making progress on her manuscript. She fell in love with a Portuguese journalist named Jorge Arens, and in October 1992, they married. But what looked like a new beginning was actually the start of her darkest chapter. The marriage was a disaster from the start. Jorge was volatile, unpredictable, and their relationship quickly turned toxic. When their daughter Jessica was born in July 1993, Joan thought perhaps motherhood might save her marriage, might give them something to build upon. She was wrong. The details of what happened in that marriage remained private for years, but what we know is this. By November 1993, just 4 months after Jessica was born, Joan fled Portugal with her infant daughter and a suitcase containing 3 chapters of a story about a boy wizard. She arrived in Edinburgh, Scotland, on her sister's doorstep, with nowhere else to go. She was 28 years old. She was a single mother with a baby. She was unemployed, broke, and more alone than she had ever been in her entire life. And the rejection letters were about to start piling up. What happened next would have broken most people. It nearly broke her, but somewhere inside Joan Rowling, there was a stubbornness, a refusal to surrender, that the universe itself couldn't extinguish. She just didn't know yet how much that stubbornness would be tested, or how close she would come to losing everything, including herself. He was rejected by 30 publishers and lived on welfare. How J.K. Rowling became the world's first billionaire author. Part 2. The darkest hour before dawn. The rejection letters kept coming. One after another. Publishers across London dismissed her manuscript without